Hello, this is Michelle from East Ave Art, and today I'm going to show you how I painted this very easy, beginner-friendly watercolor banana. So I started this project by taking a sheet of Arches watercolor paper, 140 pound, 100% cotton, cold press, and cutting it down because I didn't want it super big. But I also wanted to work on high quality paper. So Arches watercolor paper is the best paper I have. If you're a beginner, I think that it is worthwhile actually to practice on the higher quality watercolor paper, but just cut the sheet down a little bit so that you're not going through the watercolor paper as you're learning and growing. So that's kind of one of my little tricks is I start sort of with smaller sheets when I first started doing watercolor. And I really wanted to practice on the good quality paper because I felt like that made the biggest difference in the outcome. So it's good to just sort of get used to it. And also have your cheaper paper that you also practice on sometimes. This was a project that I felt pretty comfortable drawing directly on the watercolor paper. A lot of times I like to draw on a sketch pad or tracing paper and then transfer it over just to kind of save myself from all the erasing. But this, a banana is pretty easy to draw, right? So I went ahead and just drew right on there. And I also put washi tape on each side of the watercolor paper just so that I could have a nice border at the end. So I am using Shayda Campbell's selection of paints here. I think it's Daler-Rowney is the paint company, and I activate those paints by spraying them with a little water bottle just to get them started. And they're really nice paints. I kind of feel like I get, the color is just is pretty creamy and vibrant. So I'm really happy with the quality of these paints. And I'm starting to mix up a bunch of different yellows. So I want sort of a base light color for, to serve as the base of the banana peel. But then if you look at a banana, it's always kind of got a variation of colors on it. So one way that we can get a little bit of realism is to mix up some darker colors that we can drop in as well. So I'm got a range of yellows there and then some browns as well to get us started. Okay, and from here, I'm actually just going to fill in. You can't really see it super great here, obviously, because my pencil marks are pretty light. I have a preference to not have my pencil marks showing through my paints, so I make sure I kind of lighten them up. But I'm putting down where the banana is drawn in with pencil, just some clean water, and that's gonna allow me to drop in some of the watercolor paint and just sort of play around. This is like the fun part of watercolor, is just getting to sort of see how the colors and the water interact with each other. So this is like the wet into wet technique, and you can see even as I'm going, I'm at some points adding in more paint to my watery mix up of paints there. So you'll see me dip into like the palette of paints as well. And now that I've laid the baseline there of yellow, I'm going to go in with that sort of darker, more ochre yellow, and maybe drop in some lines there and just sort of show some dimension to the banana as well. And this is kind of just the funnest part to me. This is the part that feels like play. So, just to back up, the paint will only go where the water is. So once I filled in the banana with water and start dropping in paint, it's not going to go anywhere but that banana shape that I've already sort of outlined. And then you can drop in your color and just sort of see how it interacts and just sort of guide it and play with it a little bit. Sometimes I tend to overwork the paint, and you might see me doing that a little bit in this tutorial, but I'm just trying to put in all of the colors that I've mixed up and get a little dimension and a little bit of depth on this banana as I go while the paint is still wet. Okay, so I took a little break and I actually allowed that first layer to dry. And you see I did a little thing there. I put my finger on it just to make sure it's still dry. Sometimes people put the back of their hand on the paper just to see if it's dry. That's probably a better thing to do because the back of your hand's a little bit more sensitive than your finger. But anyway, I was pretty sure it was dry. I just wanted to double check. And I am actually going to start fresh with my palette here because I'm going to start mixing up the color that I want for the background. I think that yellow and blue, like kind of a teal blue, go really cool together. So I'm going to start mixing up a blue to put down as the background. So I'm going to start with that teal blue, and I think I put in a little bit of a darker blue as well, just to kind of make that fun. And you'll see that I've switched to a bigger paintbrush just because this will allow me to cover more ground a little bit more quickly. And I want to work quickly because I want to be able to apply an even amount of paint to water. And if I need to go in and drop more paint, it's just better if the whole thing is still wet. So that's why I made the switch to this bigger brush, because I'm trying to move quickly, although, you know, I've got to be a little bit careful as I go around the banana. I tend to like to do the main attraction, which is in this case a banana, before I paint the background. I don't know why. I'm not sure if everybody is like that, so I'd be kind of curious if you're listening to, maybe drop in a comment in the comment section. Like, is it better to start it with the background and paint that in first? Like, do you have a preference? To me, I feel like it makes a little more sense to paint the blue, and I'm not really even sure why, to paint this darker background in after the fact. So anyway, you can see I'm still going. I'm still checking to make sure the whole thing is wet, and that I'm working quickly in case I need to make adjustments to the thickness at any point, because I wanted this to be pretty uniform as far as the background goes. And just to backtrack, a few seconds ago I was mentioning that I wanted the banana to be dry before I started painting in the background. And the reason for that is if it is not dry, then you're going to actually see that blue blend into the yellow of the banana, and you're going to end up with green on your paper and on your painting, and I don't think that's what you want. Okay, so again, I waited until my paint dried on the background, and I'm going to go in with some more of this darker brown paint. I had put down some of the shadows and sort of the angles of the banana just while the paint was still wet, but I wanted to go in and sort of like reinforce that. And I can do that when the paint is dry. One thing you'll notice here, though, is that it kind of creates harsher lines. So when the paint is dry and I'm going in with that darker color, you can see those harsh lines that it's creating. There is a fix for that if you want to blend those lines out or you don't want them to kind of stand out so harshly. You can, once you're kind of happy with the placement of all the lines, you can actually clean off your brush and have it kind of just be damp, and then kind of rub or scrub that line just to kind of soften it a little bit. So sometimes I'll go back in and do that if I'm so inclined. So that is an option if you wanted to keep that like softness from the wet into wet blends. That's one way to kind of maintain that, even if you want to add a little bit more of the darker color after you see that it's dried and you think it needs a little bit more. You can still sort of like tone it down and have it have that like wet into wet look. even when you're painting wet onto dry like I'm doing here. So I spent a few more minutes just adding in some dots where you would see the bruising on a banana that's been hanging around for a little bit and is a little bit past ripe. And then once I've done that, there's only one thing left to do, which is to remove the washi tape. And you have these really nice clean lines. And I think that looks really cool. Oh, I had some trouble with this top one. It's going to take me a second. But anyway, what I'd really like to say is I think, you know, practicing if you're a beginner on quality paper is really going to teach you a lot. And you can do these like small little studies like a banana on a small piece of quality paper, and you'll learn a lot from it. Okay, and thanks very much for joining me. I hope that you enjoyed this, and if you did, please hit like and subscribe. Thanks.